Thanks for joining us here at Faith. We hope that you are encouraged and challenged by today's message. If you'd like to learn more about Faith, our campus locations, and how you can stay connected, check out faithishere.org after this video.
It's good to be here and to be back. It's weird to hear Jason say we've known each other for 20 years, which is true. We've known each other for a long time, like way back since before we even had love handles. So it's like that's a lie. I've had love handles since the 4th grade, so it's been a long stretch. But it's crazy to know someone for that long of a stretch of time. And I've gotten a chance to visit incrementally since we've known each other, and it's just cool to watch how God has used this church and grown and expanded its impact. The first time I came out here, you guys were just one campus, and look at the impact that God has had as He's just stretched you and enabled you to plant campuses and do incredible things. It really is phenomenal to see the growth over that stretch of time and to get to kind of watch it from a distance. And I want to let you know that you have incredible pastors here at this church. Pastor Larry is such a phenomenal man of God. I'm wowed at like watching God use him to plant and stay in one location for this long of a stretch of time. That is an anomaly. That doesn't happen very often, but he has such a heart for this community. And it's really cool, too, to just watch even as his kids have gone and done ministry, and just speaks to the power and the impact of such a great man of God. You guys are blessed. And if you haven't told him recently, take time to just let your pastor know how much you love him and appreciate him. I know he's not here, but why don't you clap loud enough? Maybe he can hear you where he's at. Well, this morning, I'm going to teach from the book of Matthew. For those of you that like to kind of get a head start and know where we're headed, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 1 today. And if you're taking notes, the title of my message today is Cast as the Coat Rack. Cast as the Coat Rack. And if you're not taking notes, same title, because it's not contingent on your note-taking willingness. It is Christmas season, and one of my favorite times of year. How many of you, you're big Christmas people? It's your favorite time of year. You love it. How many of you, your houses are decorated already? You've got the tree up. You've got the garland. You've got the stockings up. Like, you've got the nativity. You got 15 nativity scenes spread throughout the house. There's one on the bathroom counter, one in the kitchen, one in the living room. You're forcing your children to do a live nativity on the weekends in the front yard. They're bitter about it. Like, just everywhere. And I love that. My wife is such a big Christmas person. She loves to set the stage early. She likes to play Christmas music starting the beginning of November. I try and battle her. I'm like, you got to wait till Thanksgiving. And although I think I'm right, we just do whatever she wants because I like to stay married. And so we've been listening to Christmas music. The stage has been set. And we're doing all the Christmassy things. We've decorated. We went and took our Christmas card picture. I brought a copy of that so you can just get a picture of my family. It's my family right here. Even as I look at it now, I'm like, how did I trick that beautiful woman into marriage? I pray a lot, or this would not be possible. This is my family. It's my wife, Gretchen. It's the other adult in the picture, just in case you're confused. Who's that? And then Tegan is my daughter, and she is almost a teenager. Jesus, help us. Wow. Just so many emotions in our house right now. Mostly just mine, as I feel emotional about her getting older. And then our 2 boys here. Cohen is the one on the far right there. That I'm holding on to, because he did not want to take this photo. Maybe in your households, your kids are just like, we can't wait. Of course, we would love to get dressed up. Mom, we know you asked very little of us. We'd love to take a beautiful family photo. That's not the way it works in my house. This is, I think, the only one they weren't fighting in. And my wife had to get to the place where she was just like, just pretend like you love each other for 10 seconds. And my daughter's like, well, I don't feel like it. And she's like, I don't even need it to be real. I just need it to be, just get the picture. That's all I'm looking for right now. And then our other son here in the front, you can tell that he's mischievous. That is Zeke Bear. He looks like Dennis the Menace, doesn't he? He very, very much does. He acts like Dennis the Menace, gets in trouble like Dennis the Menace. This is our family. And one of the things, because I have kids so young, that happens around Christmas time is I get invited to my calendar starts filling up with so many invites to Christmas pageants of our family and our kids. There's one at school, and then there's one at the other school, and then there's one at church, and I love them. It is one of my favorite parts of the Christmas season. I know a lot of people or parents don't agree with that, and the reason why I like them is something is going to go wrong. you know, you're just waiting on something is gonna go a little bit crazy. There's always some magic that unfolds, and some people are bracing for it. I just look forward to it. I'm not even always watching my kids or the kids in my family that I came to see. I'm watching for who is just going to embarrass their family. I can't wait for that moment, right? Some of you know what I'm talking about because that was your kid. Some of you, you're like, that was me, right? Growing up. Like there's always some kid that the teacher puts in the back row because they're a little bit hyperactive, you know what I mean? They've been diagnosed with ADHD and all the other letters, right? They're the kid that they yell, scream all of the songs, you know, they don't know how to sing normal, like, silent, right? It's like, that is literally, you're like getting the point of the song incorrectly. It's silent, not just down a couple notches, right? They're in the back of the choir. They didn't bring the right costuming, right? They have no lines. They're like half the time they pull down part of the set on top of themselves and or someone else. They're taking other people's costuming and beating them with it, right? Like that kid is the magical kid to watch. That's the one I'm interested in. The kid that the parents are crossing their fingers being like, please just don't take your pants off this year. We don't need another picture of our kid standing pantsless over the manger scene. We don't need that in the wedding slideshow. We already have that. We already have that shot. And I love that. It's always some kid with a Kool-Aid mustache, hadn't had Kool-Aid for 2 weeks. Nobody knows why it's still there. The kid is bathed. It's just, it won't come off. It's a part of their personality now, right? And that kid is never in a crucial role, right? Never has a main part, no lines. Basically, they get cast as like a set piece with a hole for their face, right? Some sort of a part where normally like cardboard or construction paper, like would normally be doing what they're there to do. They're basically a prop with eyes, right? Like that's the role that they've been cast at. When you look at a program, and this is a pro tip, this holiday season, and you look down and the program says something like Karen, age 7 as bale of hay. I'm just telling you, keep your eyes on that girl, okay? Ignore the nephew you came to see. Karen is where it's at. She's gonna do something magical. She's gonna steal the show. That's how it works, right? When you read a program and you come across parts that you didn't even know were parts, right? When you're reading through the program and you get down, skip all the parts you know, get down to like donkey, tree number 7, coat rack. These kids are where it's at. Like a coat rack in a manger scene? That doesn't even make sense, right? Getting cast as a coat rack indicates a couple things. One could be you're good, but you're not good enough to be a part that's actually important. Or it could be you are so bad that the only thing that we could come up with for you to do is be a piece of furniture with a face hole. That's why you are stool number 2 in the manger scene. And, you know, maybe part of that feels sad to you, but if you're like me, I grew up in a household with a mom who was there to convince me that no matter what part I got was the most magical part in the universe. Anybody grew up with a mom like this? Or maybe you are a mom like this. My mom was like, coat rack? Are you kidding me? That is the most magical role ever. I would be ashamed if my kid got the Joseph part. That's a throwaway nothing part. Joseph does nothing. Coat rack, that's where the magic's at. I'm telling you, there's gonna be people that are gonna come to the manger scene and they're gonna visit the Savior of the universe, okay? And it's gonna be cold outside. They're gonna get inside the barn. They're gonna need to take off their coat in order to get close to the manger. Where are they gonna put that coat? They can't just throw it on the ground, okay? There's like, who knows what kind of animal droppings. There's hay everywhere. They're gonna get pet dander on that coat. People have allergy problems. Somebody's gonna leave. One of those wise men is gonna have an asthma attack and die, okay? But no, because you're the coat rack, baby. You are the coat rack and you're gonna save the day. That's the best part. Give this kid some lines. People are like, coat rack can't even talk, right? Like all things are possible with Jesus, right? This is my mom growing up. But sometimes even though you know they're getting that pep talk, you just think like, I feel sorry for them because nobody crosses their fingers and is just like, please, I hope, as they're scrolling through the list, I hope I get the coat rack, right? I hope that's the part that I get. Because it feels like a consolation prize. Like people know that it's made up, including that kid. Because you go into a pageant like wanting to be a good part, like a Mary, Joseph, shepherd. At least you get a fake beard. That's nice. Maybe a wise man, maybe even the innkeeper. But a coat rack, it just feels like you're barely even part of the story. And if you're that kid, you may find yourself thinking like, does this part even count? I mean, why do I even need to try? Why try? I mean, I'm background, I'm back row, I'm inconsequential, I'm inessential, I'm easily ignorable. Would anybody even notice if I didn't show up? Would it even impact the outcome of the story? And I know you're not a kid anymore, but I wonder if you've ever asked these questions about your life. If you've ever looked around at your life and just thought, this isn't what I expected. I think this happens even a lot more around the holiday season. We're getting together with people for Thanksgiving and for Christmas, and we're getting cards in the mail, and we're getting on Facebook, and we're looking at people's pictures, and we're getting caught up on what they've been up to and what they've done and what they've accomplished and what their kids have accomplished. And sometimes we can look at what they've done and all that they've been up to and everything that's happened in their world, and we just think like, man, by comparison, it just feels like, what am I even doing with my life? This is not what I was hoping for. I wonder if you've ever gotten really excited about your potential only to have life stick you in a lesser part. And it was not what you wanted. It was not what you expected. Maybe you thought, like, I thought I'd be married by now. I mean, when I envisioned my life, I just thought, it just seems like everybody's coupled up except for me. And I tried to put myself out there, and it just never pans out. I feel like I'm never going to find someone. I mean, I thought I'd have accomplished more by now. I thought I would have gotten a promotion. I thought I would be in a job that I'm proud of, that like I want to go to a Christmas gathering with my family and tell them what I'm up to and all that we've accomplished. But like, I just feel like I'm another just person on a faceless assembly line. I feel like I'm disposable, like I'm easily replaceable. It's just not how I envisioned my life. I thought, when I got out of college, I thought there would be a position for me. I thought, like, man, for all the money that I spent and all the hard work I put in, I'd be able to, like, parlay it into something that I'm excited about, but, it feels like my degree is worthless. It feels like I work so hard just to pay the rent on an apartment I don't even like. When we fell in love, I didn't think it was going to be perfect, but I thought it would be better than this. I thought we would be the couple that everyone looks at from a distance and they're just like, hashtag couples goals. Like, how do we get to that? They're so in love. And yet, if I'm honest, despite the way things look on Instagram or Facebook, like, I don't even want to be in the same room with her. I don't even want to come home to him anymore. And I thought, man, if we could just have kids, like that would fix it. Like if we could just have kids, that would be so fulfilling. They would be such a source of joy, and everything would just come together in my life. Wow, did that backfire? That did not work out the way I thought. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot with these kids, okay? And it just feels like they're fighting all the time. Is there ever not a time where they're not fighting, right? Like they're at each other, and it's so frustrating. And sometimes I think to myself, I just think like, man, I wonder if I would have been better off just not having kids. And I feel so guilty for even having had that thought. I wonder if you've ever thought, like, I want to believe that my life is special, but part of you is like, is that just some stupid story we tell ourselves to try and get through the day? Because maybe you're at a place in your life where you're like, this is me trying. And I look around at the people who have the things that I want, and it just feels like it's not fair, because it feels like that should be me, because I work really hard and I have good ideas and I put in the time, and for some reason I feel like I'm stuck in the back row with some uninspiring role that I didn't ask for. And sometimes it makes me angry, and sometimes it makes me sad, and sometimes it makes me just want to give up and walk away and be done. I would tell you this morning, it is hard adjusting to the reality of a role you never really wanted. And some of us have these moments in our life where we look around towards the end of a year and we don't feel proud of where we find ourselves. This isn't what we had dreamt it was going to be. There's something heartbreaking about that. Disappointing and disillusioning. And while it may be true that we don't all want a starring role, we do all want, I think, a significant role. We want who we are and what we do to matter. We want to make a difference. I think we want to have an impact. We want to be an integral part of a story that we feel like is going somewhere. We want to be in a part that is worth referencing. We want to be someone whose absence would alter the story that we're in. Some of us are sitting in the middle of a season of life where we wonder, does what I do even matter? I think in the elaborate ongoing story of humanity, nobody wants to be cast as a coat rack. So this is my question this morning. Like, what happens when you look around at your life and that's what it feels like? I'm back row. I'm background. What I do and who I am doesn't matter. This morning, I want to wrestle with these questions by looking at Matthew chapter 1, and we're going to read together the entire New Testament this morning. And I just think the Bible is so rich, and you guys will wait for that. It's going to be rewarding. Just hang on. No, I'm just kidding. But we are going to read all of chapter 1 of the book of Matthew. And I call this like the part of the story everyone skips. It's technically part of the Christmas story, but it's the part known as the genealogy, right? It's the family tree. It's this list of names of like so-and-so begat so-and-so. And most people, we don't even read this, whether it's in our devotional time or whether it's when we're presenting the Christmas story, unless you're my grandpa and you have grandkids trying to open gifts. You're like, we're reading the whole thing in old school King James. I'm going to pronounce every word slowly. But I don't know if you've ever kind of slowed down and just wondered, like, who are these people? I mean, I get that they're like in the lineage of Jesus. Like, I get that's where he came, but like, who are they really? Like, what did they do? Like, what were their lives like? Like, if you're going to tell a story about God coming to earth in human form in order to save the world, why start this story with these particular names? And I'm going to spend some time this morning just unpacking who they are and what their story looked like. Matthew chapter 1. Verse 1, I'm reading from the New Living Translation. It says, this is a record of the ancestors of Jesus the Messiah, a descendant of David and of Abraham. Now, Abraham was a pagan. He's the person that our faith kind of starts with. He's this hero of the Old Testament. God calls him away from his pagan roots, and he has great faith. He also did some shady stuff. He also lied about his wife being his sister and allowed her to be abducted into a king's harem. And then later on, he slept with her servant, and then that servant got pregnant, and then once she had a kid, he felt weird about it, and so he sent them both out into a desert to die. And so when the author of this story was going to write it, they were like, let's start with that guy. That sounds like a great foundation on which to build. And this is how the story starts, with this guy, Father Abraham, who had many sons. Many sons had this Father Abraham. I'm one of them, and so are you. Right arm, left arm. You guys know the song. Verse 2 says this, Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. Isaac had two sons. He favored one. He totally neglected the other one, which set off this chain reaction of insecurity that wreaked havoc on the family for generations. And Jacob, whose name literally means liar, manipulator, thief, is only on this list because he literally cheated his brother out of being on the list. So definitely he's got to be a part of the backstory. It says Jacob was the father of Judah and his brothers. Verse 3, Judah was the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. Tamar is a really interesting person. She married one of Judah's sons, and that son was wicked and he died. And so Judah's like, no problem, I got a backup son. So he marries her off to like one of the brothers, right? And she can't give a child, like they can't get pregnant. And so he blames her, Judah does, and he sends her back to be with her abusive father. And she just feels like she's used up, like she has no purpose in life. And she feels frustrated, a little bitter. Later, Judah is traveling, and so she decides she's going to get revenge. And she does this by deciding that she's going to pose as a prostitute and entrap him. Of course, this is not going to be a problem because he's not out trolling for prostitutes. Except he is. He is doing that. And so he sleeps with her, except he doesn't know it's her, and then she gets pregnant. And because he knows her, because she used to be part of his family, he decides that she needs to be burned in the town square for being so immoral. And so they gather up, everyone's watching, she's in the middle of the town, they get ready to light her on fire, and then she, in the middle of everyone, points out, Jerry Springer style, that he is the father. And he's shocked, but can't deny it in the moment, and she ends up going, like they don't burn her, she ends up having the 2 kids, and the 2 kids are Perez and Zerah, who are included in the genealogy of Jesus. Crazy, right? Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron was the father of Ram, which later became a great series of trucks. Ram was the father of Amminadab. Amminadab was the father of Nahashon. Nahashon was the father of Salmon. That doesn't even sound like a real name, right? That's an entree option at a wedding. This guy made it on the list. Salmon was the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Rahab is the second prostitute on this list, although her story is more like Pretty Woman style, right? Salmon marries her despite her history, and he realizes that she didn't have options coming up, and so he believes in her. They have this incredible romance, and then they have a son. His name is Boaz. He marries Ruth, and like his mom, Ruth is a foreigner. She's an outcast. She doesn't fit in with their people, and he stakes his reputation, puts it all on the line for her, like his dad did for his mom. Boaz was the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Obed was the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of King David. Now, Jesse wasn't exactly dad of the year. He sees no value in his son David. He feels like the kid is pretty much worthless. Even though he's gifted and he ends up being king, David has a good heart, but like a lot of charismatic people, not really great impulse control. In fact, one time he spies on a woman who's taking a bath. Not his finest moment. Then he has her brought to him. He sleeps with her. Then he has to kill the husband to cover up the pregnancy. Then he has the baby, she has the baby, and the baby dies tragically, which throws him into this really, depressive free fall. And then right after that, the affair goes public and he shames the entire kingdom. David was the father of Solomon, whose mother was Bathsheba, the widow of Uriah. So everyone knows his parents' shameful story. He has to grow up living his whole life with people whispering about oh, you know his story, you know what happened, you know what they did. And so he's always trying to run from that reputation. He's trying to numb the pain of that being his experience. He tries every debaucherous thing he can think of to try and figure out how to get some joy and meaning out of his life. And then he records all these things, and we put them in the Bible. One of which is sleeping with 1,500 women, which he doesn't end up being excited about. He ends up depressive, and he writes some of the darkest poetry in all of human history. We call it the book of Ecclesiastes. Verse 7 says, Solomon was the father of Rehoboam. Rehoboam is gifted. When he's given the kingdom, man, it couldn't be richer. It couldn't have more potential. And yet he surrounds himself with idiot advisors. He makes all these dumb decisions, and he throws the nation into civil war. And by the time he dies, the whole country is bankrupt. Rehoboam is the father of Abijah. Abijah was the father of Uzzah. Uzzah was the father of Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat was the father of Jehoram. Jehoram was the father of Uzziah. Uzziah was the father of Jotham. Jotham was the father of Ahaz. Ahaz was pure evil. Right? He worshiped idols, he practiced witchcraft, he sacrificed his own child to an idol in front of a live audience. He stole from the church to pay off an attacking army, and then after he did, the army still attacked and ransacked the entire country anyway. Ahaz was the father of Hezekiah. Hezekiah was the father of Manasseh. Hezekiah makes friends with the Babylonians. And even though God was just like, hey, whatever you do, just don't make friends with the Babylonians. And he was just like, all right, got it. I'm definitely going to be making friends with the Babylonians, though. So you're like, this sounds like my kid. I understand you. I'm going to do the opposite of what you're telling me. And when he does this, the Babylonians come in and they end up enslaving his people. They take them away from their homeland. They're in exile for years and years and years and years. And he raises Manasseh, who has the reputation for being the most evil leader in all of Israelite history. He burns all of his own kids alive. He practices witchcraft in the temple, brings idols into the temple, squanders the nation's resources, fosters all sorts of abuse, addiction, and depravity that poisoned his people for years. Manasseh is the father of Amon. Amon is the father of Josiah. Josiah is the father of Jehoiachin. Somebody named their kid that. That name is magic. And then there's a collection of people whose stories we don't know anything about. Like scholars have tried to dig up information and they know their names, but they don't know anything more about them. And all this leads us to this. Verse 16, Jacob was the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary. Mary gave birth to Jesus, who is called the Messiah. I just think sometimes, we think Bible-y people, because they're in the Bible, have it all together. But some of them are just as messed up as me and you. In fact, as you're listening to this heritage, some of you are like, I am not that messed up. Well, those people did way more dark and shady and sinful things than I've ever even been a part of. The question is, why start the Jesus story like this? Like with these particular people? Like, why mention them at all? Why not just edit out the bad parts? I mean, that's what we would do, right? In fact, that's what some of us do. You ever had those moments where your kid brings home the family tree they're trying to fill out, and they're like, what goes in this spot? And you're like, we don't really talk about them. Those were some dark years. How come there's no pictures in the photo album for this little stretch? It's like, well, we don't really talk about that. How come they never come over for Thanksgiving? Oh, we don't really need to get into that whole deal. We want to edit out all the parts that we're not quite proud of in our family's history. But that's not the way this story begins. Why would you want people to know that Jesus came from all this? And I think God includes these people at the beginning of his story because they're the point of the story. What makes God God isn't his ability to do good things with good people. It's his reputation for doing good things with bad people, with broken people, with background people. This is who God is. This is what makes him God. When God writes a story, there are no small, insignificant, unnecessary, or out-of-place parts. God uses scarred people to save the world. And that's good news for me and you, because how many of you, like me, you've got some scars in your life? You've got some moments that you're not quite proud of. You've got some stories that you'd rather not tell. You've got some moments, some of which are more recent than you would want people in the room to know, that you would love to edit out of your story. And yet God looks at you and says, you're part of what I'm doing. This is who God is. God spotlights those that others sideline. He builds key plot points around those that others would just edit out of the story altogether. And in fact, this is so instrumental in the gospel story that it comes up again and again and again and again. In fact, by the time we get to the Apostle Paul, who's writing letters to the early churches in the New Testament, he writes this, 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 12. He says, the human body has many parts, but the many parts make up one whole body, and so it is with the body of Christ. Verse 18, God has put each part where he wants it. I want you to think about that for a minute, just as it relates to your life and where you find yourself at this moment in time. God has put each part just where he wants it. Verse 22, in fact, some parts that seem weakest and least important are actually the most necessary. You can't edit them out. They're essential. The story is built on their foundation. And what Paul is saying is that God's plot to rescue the world has many different parts and many different roles, but every single one is significant. God casts his story with great intentionality. He places people in certain parts on purpose for a purpose. The issue is we don't always get the role we want. And maybe that's a little bit the story of your life. Maybe that's the story of this season. We look around and we find ourselves brooding over being stuck in the back row and wishing for something a little bit bigger, a little bit better. It feels like we're just one of these names on the list that people skip over to get to the real story, the good stuff, the stuff that actually matters. We don't always like where we are, or what we've been given to do or who we've been paired with or the skills that we've been endowed with. But the reality is, making a story better is less about the part you're given and more about being fully present in the part you've got. And sometimes we have this dialogue with God where we're just like, God, I could really do something significant if you would give me a better part. If you'd give me a better role, if you'd grant me more influence, if you'd give us some resources, if you'd finally promote me already, if you were to put me in a different family, if you were to give me some more money, if you were to give me a different reputation or more respect from people, like God, if you were to do the things for me that I want you to do for me, then I could really have an impact. But everything we see in Scripture, especially the Jesus story, surfaces the reality that you don't need a different part. You need to be present in the one God has given you because He puts every part just where He wants it. I wonder if you've ever come up on somebody who is doing a job or fulfilling a role that you would never want, but they bring their whole selves to it in such a way that you almost envy them. I remember taking my kids to McDonald's a while back, don't tell my wife, for breakfast. And as we're ordering breakfast, there's this guy who's on, cooking the hash browns and the French fries, and he is whistling and dancing around. My kids are fixated on this guy. And he's winking at him and dancing and doing these different moves, and he's making this whole production out of it, and he's smiling, and he's in the background. We're not even supposed to know he's there. We're not supposed to pay attention to him. He's not supposed to be the star of the show, but he's the only thing we can focus on. I'm having trouble just making the order because I just want to watch what he's doing. There's something about the energy and the excitement and the attitude that he brought with him into the role that he was fulfilling, where I just thought, man, that guy's gonna take over. It's funny, we went to sit down with our Trey, and my youngest son, Zeke, he's like, man, did you see that guy back there? I was like, yeah, I did. And he goes, man, that's what I wanna do when I grow up. And the thing of it is, he's not envious of the guy's job, he's envious of the way he feels about the position he's been put in. And I'll tell you, there are people in your life who have jobs or roles or relationships that you wish you could get access to, and they hate their lives. There are people who are doing things you would never want to do, and they are completely content and fulfilled. It's not about the part you're given. It's about being present in the part you got. And I just wonder what would have happened if those in Jesus' genealogy just decided, I'm not going to give it all I got until I get something better to give myself to. It just doesn't feel worth it. What's in front of me, it feels like background stuff. It doesn't feel like a big deal. In the context of the Christmas story, of the Christ story, I'm sure they felt like what they were handed was little more than a coat rack roll, a piece of furniture with a face cut out. But the truth is, when the plot matters, every part matters. And this story matters. Every story that Jesus enters into matters. The way you do what you do matters. Being present in the part you play today is a big deal, even if it's a small thing. You may be a coat rack, but you are a Christmas pageant coat rack in the Christ story, and that's something special. I think this voice that sometimes we hear or recognize, the voice that I recognize is the voice of my mother, who looks at me and says, baby, you've got this, you were made for this. What you have been chosen to do is special. I don't think that is a mom voice or a grandma voice. I don't think it's just the voice of our earthly mother. I think it's the voice of our Heavenly Father, encouraging us, saying, you don't think I'm in control? You don't think I know what I'm doing? You don't think I'm making the whole thing work together for something that is gonna rescue mankind? You don't think I've chosen and put intentionally all the parts together exactly just where I wanted them? You don't think I have a plan for your life? You don't think that what you're doing is instrumental to the story? Every part matters in this plot. You may feel like you're a coat rack, but you have great intentionality. Give it everything you've got. There's something I'm doing in your world, in your family, in your city, something connected to the salvation of somebody else that is contingent upon you owning who you are and where you came from and what you have to do and what is in front of you. Bring your whole self to the role you find yourself in. That's what God is challenging you to do. Because the truth of the matter is, whether or not you end up being background or not has nothing to do with the role you were handed. It has everything to do with the way you view the role you were handed. I just wonder what would happen if you gave all that you have and all that you are to the moment you find yourself in. I wonder how it would ripple out in ways that you can't even imagine. I wonder what kind of incredible stories are gonna be built on your name and your family's name and your kids' names, the role that you had to play. And maybe somewhere in the future where something dynamic and incredible happens that you can't even imagine right now, someone will read off a list with your name on it because they would not be there without you. I wonder what would happen if you owned who you are in Christ. I gotta tell you, the people that had the biggest impact on me, it wasn't because they did big things, it was because they did really small things with big passion. When I was a kid, 7 or 8 years old, I remember this lady who taught our Sunday school class. Her name was Sister Leola. She was terrible. She was not great. It was definitely the sort of thing where they were like, who really would be excited about, feels gifted to teach Sunday school? No one? Who's available, right? And she was always available, and she was in our class, and she wasn't that great at telling stories. She would always forget the memory verse she was teaching. There would be times I'd come home from church and I would rattle off the memory verse, and my dad's like, that's not even how it goes. I don't even know. She just put extra words in there. I don't even know what's happening. But there's one thing that she did really well. She loved the people in front of her with her whole heart. There wasn't a time that I came into the classroom where she didn't look me directly in the eye and pull me in for like a huge hug, and then push me on and hold me by the shoulders and just say, Adams. She just pluralized my name for no reason. Adams, you're different, but there's something special about you. God's gonna use you in a way that he doesn't use other people, to do special things that he can't get other people to do. There's a uniqueness to you. It's on purpose. You're gonna change the world. And then she would give me a Werther's Original and send me into main service. That's just what you did. And I tell you, those moments stay with me, and I think that you have a part to play in the people's lives around you in much the same way. I think the God who created you and put you where you are in this moment, regardless of where it was where you wanted to be, you're lined up for greatness. Seize the moment.